What's the most dirty thing you saw at a sleepover? When I was young, we went on a family trip to Vegas. I woke up in the hotel to my parents having sex in the bed next to me. I was trapped and had nowhere to go. My mom said something along the lines of "Stop, we are gonna wake up the kids." My dad gets up, walks over to our bed and rips the blankets off our faces and said, "See, fast asleep. I should have won an Oscar." The dad's mistress came over. Apparently the mother knew of her existence and it had been putting a strain on things. My buddy and I hid in the basement while the wife and mistress were screaming at each other upstairs. Shockingly did not cause a divorce. When I was in elementary school, I got invited with my sister to a birthday party of one of her friends. Everything was going fine for most of the night, and then the catastrophe happened. Her mom came down to the basement and was clearly very upset, but didn't explain why. She then had each of us line up on the stairs from the basement to the ground level of the house and brought us in one by one. I wasn't the first in line, but no one was telling us what happened once it was their turn. Finally I was up, and her mom took me into the bathroom and showed me a trash can with a poop in it. She was basically on the verge of tears, pointing to the trash can and asking me, "Is this your poop? Is this your poop?" It wasn't. We never found out whose it was, or at least I wasn't told. We have joked that someone will finally come forward on their deathbed, but my sister and I have since lost contact with those girls, so we may never know. I was young and staying the night at a friend's house with two other girls when we were woken up by a loud popping noise from her brother's room. Naturally, 4 curious girls went to see what the hell he was doing at 3 in the morning. Her mom came running up the stairs about the time we entered his room and quickly herded us back out of his room in hysterics. It took my brain forever to register that he had shot himself in the chest. Luckily he survived, and I never had another sleepover at someone else's house again. Plenty of nightmares though. When I was like 9 or 10, I spent the night at a friend's house. I knew his mom was pretty strict, but holy crap did I find out how much. He did something really minor like leave his socks in the living room and she started shouting at him like he left a turd on the floor or something. Then he pissed her off again that night and she wailed on his ass so hard that it scared me. She was a psycho the way she was spanking and shouting at him. I hated her guts after that night. I'm so sorry you'll have to suffer the mental image of this, but it was a classic high school sleepover. We ate tons of junk food and drank a good amount of smuggled beers, after which friend 1 suggests we sneak into the community pool to go skinny dipping. We were all pretty reckless, so it came as a surprise when friend 2 vehemently opposed the idea. He absolutely would not budge for the longest time. Of course, we eventually bullied him into compliance, as HS kids do, climbed the fence, dropped our drawers, and went for a dip. Unfortunately for us, it must have been a full moon that night, because despite the lateness of the evening there was still enough light for us all to see. To our horror, the aptly named friend 2 began releasing stream after stream of projectile diarrhea just moments after we all got in the pool. And yes, it looked exactly like what you're undoubtedly picturing in your mind right now. We also completely neglected to bring towels, so we ended the night with a long, wet, cold, and completely silent walk back to friend 1's house. The next morning, friend 2 pretended to have blacked out from his 2 beers and claimed he had no memory of the event. We are still friends to this day, and hilariously enough he is now my gastroenterologist. Not me, but a friend. When we were 14, she went to a girl's house for a sleepover. Girl's dad let them hang out in the garage and drink beer. Later my friend was sitting outside alone, and the dad came out and started talking to her. Then he tried to kiss her, and as she backs away, the mom walked out and caught him. She started screaming at both of them and told my friend she needed to leave. She was 14 and drunk, and the girl whose house it was told her mom that was bullshit and she was staying. My friend said she couldn't sleep all night. The next morning the mom took my friend alone into the bedroom and apologized and said they were having marital problems and he had cheated on her before. Hopefully it wasn't with any other kids. When I was about 15, there was a couple in my cousin's congregation that offered to host a sleepover for some of the teen girls. I was staying with my cousin at the time, so I went with her to their house for the sleepover. When I got there, I realized that this couple only had one kid, and it was a little boy, maybe 6 or 7 years old. The couple set us 5 teenage girls up in the basement. It was furnished and carpeted, not a creepy basement, and the wife set out a bunch of snacks, and then we didn't see her or the little boy the rest of the night. But the 30-something dad spent most of the evening with us, offering us sips of his Kahlua drink and leaving the liquor cabinet doors open when he would announce that he was going to another room. I was creeped out, but I was so sheltered at the time that I didn't understand why exactly until years later. It's nothing that I saw, but more like something that happened to me. I was 13 when I stayed over at my friend's house for the night. We were up pretty late playing video games and eating snacks. I got thirsty, so me and my friend went to the fridge to get a bottle of Coke. When I opened the bottle, the soda shot straight up my face and got all over my white shirt. I asked my friend if I could shower since I was pretty sticky from the soda. Once I got out the shower, I noticed my friend and his little brother were knocked out in the living room sofas. By the way, I had no shirt on since the soda ruined mine completely. That's when their aunt came through the front door and saw me. She got close to me and started to rub her hands around my chest and shoulders. I was completely shocked and stayed still. Then my friend's brother woke up and saw what was going on. She stopped touching me right away and said, "Oh, I thought you were my nephew." Then went straight to her room and never came out until I left the next morning. Even if I were her nephew, why the hell would she touch me like that? To this day I wonder what would have happened if my friend's little brother hadn't woken up. My friend's older brother would get mad at her for small things, went in his room, lost the TV remote, shut her door too loudly, and proceed to beat the crap out of her, pull her hair, and hold her down, and punch her in the sides, literally throw her across the room. He was almost 10 years older than us, and easily had 150 pounds on her. He would eventually tire from the beatings, leave the room, and she would go back to playing with me like nothing happened. I remember being so unbelievably shocked by it, but eventually became desensitized because of how normal it seemed to her and how unfazed she was by it. This isn't really that freaked up, but hilarious. A group of us guys were over at our friend's for his birthday, somewhere around 8 to 10-year-olds. We were playing Monopoly. The game had already been going on for a while and had gotten a little heated. House rule was that if you don't realize someone is on your property before the next roll, rent is forfeited. I roll my dice and land on a property where S had owned the monopoly. I quickly gave my dice to the next player G and he rolled. G moves on before S realized what happened. S blew up. He started yelling and screaming about how I cheated him out of his rent. S ends up taking all of his money and walks away from the board. G starts egging him on, saying things like, "You going to buy some fake toys with that fake money?" This pisses off S even more. It escalates into a real wrestle fight, 5 to 6 young boys all screaming and wrestling about fake money. Now this all happened somewhere around midnight after an evening of junk food and movie watching. We were in the basement of the house and the parents' bedroom was immediately at the top of the stair. The door in the stairs blows open with the dad. He has his belt in his hands and booms, "If you all don't stop now, I will whip all of you." That silences us all. We settle down and realize that we should probably be sleeping. We all climb into our sleeping bags to try to sleep. S takes us over to the corner with his money. G whispers, "You still going to buy those fake toys?" We all snicker. To this day S is still pissed off about that game. That was nearly 40 years ago. I saw porn for the first time. We were watching movies on my friend's TV and fell asleep watching. Must have been on Cinemax or something, because I woke up in the middle of the night. It was a porno of man and woman in the shower. That was really awkward since I was 13 and hadn't experienced anything like that. I was too scared to turn it off because her parents were up in another room and I didn't want them to know I was awake. So I pretended to be asleep. I eventually fell back to sleep, but it took forever. The worst was her parents fighting. They would yell, curse, hit each other, and were always drunk. What's the most freaked up is I stayed there so often that it became sort of normal to me. I didn't like it, but it wasn't something I could stop. I had so many weird and inappropriate conversations with her drunk mother. Conversations about me and my friend's sex lives, or about her problems. The worst was when he shoved her into a metal pole and it bent. I didn't see it happen, but that pole was like a twisted monument to the violence that regularly took place. All the sleepovers there in my teens messed me up more than I thought. If I told my parents the whole truth of how bad it was, I don't think they would have let me sleep over. We had put up a tent in my buddy's backyard. There was a catwalk that his backyard had a gate to that went down between the houses and eventually came to a school field. It was late. We were chilling in the tent laughing and eating snacks when we heard voices coming down the path. There were shrubs along the fence line, except for the gate area, so they couldn't see us, but we snuck out and hid in the bushes and were going to scare them when they walked past. But the closer they got, the older they sounded. One guy sounded really angry. So we decided to stay super quiet, let them pass, and go back to the tent. When they got just past the house, the dude was pressuring this girl to give him a blowjob right then and there. She didn't want to, but gave it after asking a couple times. We had to sit there for like 10 minutes until he came, and were terrified that if we made a sound he would see us and kill us. We were probably around 12 years old. Scary crap. I grew up in a very rural area of the southern US. A middle school girlfriend was having a sleepover, and later in the evening her mom told us she, the mom, could talk to the spirits of dead people through her daughter. She got her daughter drunk on wine and hypnotized her. I don't know how long we sat in that room, but a lot of time went by with her mom demanding spirits speak through her daughter. Her daughter admitted to all sorts of terrible things, supposedly dead people's spirits speaking through her. This was over 30 years ago, and I still remember it. I remember the mom sitting in a chair chain smoking, and her daughter slumped over in a chair, seemingly dog drunk, slurring confessions of murder, suicide, being killed, etc. She told us sometimes spirits would manifest in such a way that her daughter would attack her and tear the house up. It was really strange. Her daughter was a very quiet girl. The things that spoke through her were not like her at all. It was freaked up. My best friend at the time had a birthday sleepover, group of 9-year-olds, myself included. My best friend also happened to invite a kid that was often bullied at school. No one in our group had any problems with him, and we just played like kids did. When it came to sleeping downstairs after a fun birthday party, around 2 AM the bullied kid started crying quietly to not wake anyone up. I, for some reason, was awake and asked him why he's crying. He began saying that he can't stand getting bullied anymore and wanted to kill himself. For my 9-year-old self at the time, who had no concept of suicide and taking their own life, I could only remember thinking, why would he want to die, lol. It got to a point where I started freaking out because he wouldn't stop crying. I called my best friend's father upstairs. He came down and calmed him down. The bullied kid's parents came to pick him up around 3 AM because he would not stop crying. The poor parents didn't know their child had been struggling at school, immediately got him counseling, and his bullies were kicked out of the school after an investigation. From what I saw on social media last year, the kid graduated from university and is doing well. Looking back, it was incredibly sad and terrible that a 9-year-old was thinking about taking their own life, and I am so glad that I called my best friend's dad's help upstairs instead of ignoring him. My best friend was sleeping over when we were about 11 over 12, and we were hanging out in my room, me on my bed and her on a mattress between my bed and the window. Out of absolutely nowhere we hear a bang and my wall-length window totally shatters. Glass flies clean across the room and we are both covered. We both start losing our damn minds and run out of the room, both of us covered in blood and cutting our feet up as we run. My dad flies into action mode and locks us in the pantry, grabs a kitchen knife and runs into the backyard to look for anyone who may have been behind the window smashing. There was no one, so he calls the police and tends to our injuries. When the police arrive they search my room for a cause and discover a huge solid ball bearing, presumably from a truck. It had landed less than 20 centimeters from where my friend's foot had been. If it had hit one of us, it could have killed us. There is no roads or anything near us, and my room faced into the back fence, so to this day we still have no clue where it came from or how it was traveling at such a speed it cleared possibly multiple fences and smashed a window. My mum had been out getting us Happy Meals while this whole ordeal went on, so she was more than a little shocked when she arrived home. One of my friends went over to his mate's house for a double date. They were watching Point Break and decided to eat coquito as a snack during. Owner of the house was absent-mindedly eating, not realizing that nobody else was. He ate any entire king-sized roll to himself. They all went off to bed, and the owner went up to his room. Around the middle of the night they hear freaked up sounds coming from upstairs and all go to investigate, including the girl the owner really liked, because he is clearly in trouble. Owner was buck naked in his inside calling for help, shitting and vomiting violently and uncontrollably as the dough had fermented and expanded in his stomach. Had to get the ambulance. Don't think they dated after it. Like and subscribe for more Reddit videos.